Hey there, fans and newcomers to the Coffee People podcast. In case you didn't know, we have two other shows, Coffee Smarter and Coffee Smarter Pro, where we disseminate coffee education and introduce new coffee products and concepts to enthusiasts and industry professionals alike. You can find those on all your favorite podcast platforms, including Apple and Spotify. On Coffee Smarter Pro, we recently chatted with Sanjeev Mankotia, the founder and head engineer of GaeaStar, a company that has been developing the technology to efficiently and effectively produce clay coffee cups at scale in an effort to replace the common plastic-lined ones you find at most cafes. Our chat went beyond the concept into Sanjeev's background and motivation for starting GaeaStar, and I thought listeners of the Coffee People podcast might enjoy it. What you're about to hear is our interview in full from earlier this year. Thanks for listening, and enjoy. Hey there. Before we get started, I want to shout out GaeaStar Coffee Packaging. They've really stepped up to become the presenting sponsor of Coffee Smarter Pro. You can learn more about GaeaStar's packaging, pricing, and how they can help your business tell its big story through your coffee package on GaeaStar.com. Their support is why we can keep offering up these podcasts and our newsletter at CoffeeSmarterPodcast.com for free. So check out GaeaStar.com to learn more. The link is in the bio and in this show's podcast notes. And now, it's time for another episode of your favorite podcast. Hello everyone, welcome back to Coffee Smarter Pro. This show is part of the Roast West Coast Coffee Network, and I'm your host, Ryan Wolt. This episode is presented, as always, by GaeaStar Coffee Packaging, found online at GaeaStar.com. Our guest expert today is Sanjeev Mankotia. He is the CEO, founder, and lead engineer at GaeaStar, a San Francisco, California-based company that is attempting to solve a major sustainability problem in coffee by replacing plastic-lined takeaway coffee cups with 3D printed clay versions that not only eliminate the plastic, but provide a better coffee experience. And maybe, just maybe, someday they'll be produced right at the cafe. While you're listening to the show today, check out our website, CoffeeSmarterPodcast.com. And before you put your phone in your pocket, please take a second to give the show a ranking and review wherever you happen to be listening. It helps others in the coffee industry find this show, and in turn learn more about being in the business of coffee. A rising tide lifts all boats, so to speak. Thanks to David, who recently gave us 5 stars and left us a few nice compliments on Apple Podcasts. And now, on to another Coffee Smarter Pro conversation. This one with Sanjeev Mankotia of GaeaStar.
My name is Sanjeev Mankotia. The company's name is GaeaStar Corporation. And my role, I'm the founder and CEO and lead engineer at the moment.
At the moment, but
Yes.
growing.
Yes.
So, Sanjeev, welcome to Coffee Smarter Pro. I really appreciate you being here. I was learning a little bit more about your company, GaeaStar, in particular the cups that you're making. Before we get into that, I'm wondering if you could just give us a little background. What is GaeaStar? What are you making, and what was the inspiration for it?
Sure. So our mission, maybe we start with that, is to eliminate plastic waste, specifically single-use plastic waste. I'm an engineer by training. Worked in the bicycling industry, then automotive industry, and then moved into finance for the latter part of my career. The inspiration came from, I'm Indian by heritage, and I want to say almost 15 years ago, I was visiting India and extended family. There was an instance where one of my family members wanted to just kind of go for a walk, and on the walk, she approached this tea vendor. And in India, a lot of street vendors, come from very humble backgrounds, and they have a little rickshaw and a little pot. So, and they're called chai walas. Chai, the word chai is direct translation is tea. So when you order chai tea, you're basically saying you want a tea. A little joke there. So she approached this tea vendor or chaiwala and served her the tea. And I've seen this before, been to India many times, where they serve it in a really crudely made terracotta cup. So she got the tea, enjoyed it, and then smashed it on the ground. And I was like, a little bit of my reaction was like, well, I get it that India's, developing country and stuff, but this is sort of the issues, the littering. And a reaction to a quick response was like, well, but it's made out of dirt, and why do you care? And this has been done for thousands of years. And I didn't have a witty response to that, and that kind of made me think, yeah, humans have been using clay or earthenware ever since humanity's been recorded, right, in history. And actually, animals also use it in different forms, whether it's like a ant making an anthill and so on and so forth. It's a naturally occurring mineral. And I want to differentiate for your audience is we're not talking about organics. Organics are things that have actual carbon in it. There is, sort of this biomaterial, right? Those are
Mm-hmm.
pure, sorry, my engineer is coming out. Those are more organic. And then inorganics are things like silica, which is sand and other minerals. But those are also naturally occurring. And clay, majority of it is all
Mm-hmm.
inorganic material. I'm sure you could find little pieces of organic stuff, but it's natural, and most of it is that. And humans have used it or and created earthenware. And you go to remote parts of the world, you'll find it still in villages and whatnot. So this practice in India has been there for thousands of years, and you drink it and you smash the cup on the ground.
Which I just want to interject and say sounds awesome. I would love to smash my cup after every cup of tea or cup of coffee. So I'm going to leave that there and let you continue.
Yeah, it is. I think it's very therapeutic
Yeah.
experience. And we've actually seen that with us too, and I'll get into that too, because we have something called a smash box. So people can smash their cups, and even little kids like to do it. They want to jump on the cups and stuff. So that's some of the inspiration came from that. Like, hey, yeah, that's actually the original, sort of to go cup, if you would. And then I got some inspiration from nature, call it biomimicry, where you look at an egg, and the egg shell is actually perfect packaging developed by nature, and it's super thin, but it's structurally quite strong, for what its purpose
Mm-hmm.
is. And that's also inorganic. Most of the eggshell is calcium, right? So it's not a biomaterial. It's calcium. Then the thought started. It's been a long time I've had this idea. So this is the journey and how the inspiration came. It's like, how can I make eggshell thin clay cups? Because I want to really compete or replace the current paper plastic products, because today a regular go cup has, it's made out of paper and has some form of plastic lining, whether it's a petroleum based plastic lining or it's a bio based plastic lining. And technically, those are technically recyclable. Technically, they can be sort of composted, right? Bio stuff. But the reality is that it's too expensive, too complicated to separate those two layers for the infrastructure that exists today. And our research has shown that 99% of these, any any iteration of that, they're all going into landfill. In Europe, they incinerate them. In other parts of the North America, Canada, and stuff, they go into a landfill. They're not being recycled or composted. And then the other crazy statistic that I found, I think it was a National Geographic article, but it's been repeated other places too, that 90% of all plastic ever made hasn't been recycled. And the world produces over 400 million tons of plastic a year.
Yeah, the number of bottles and things is crazy, and I would point out
Yeah.
what you mentioned, paper cups like you get to go from the coffee shop. It's not maybe direct, but to me feels sometimes a little bit like a form of greenwashing in the sense that it feels like it should be recyclable, but it's not, and most people don't know that.
Yeah, and it's I think customers usually think that, because that's what it's perceived as a missing part of the education, right? Because they have greatest intent, like, yeah, they want to be responsible. And I think the coffee roasters also want to be responsible. Somewhere, the system is not super clear, right? And then that's
Hmm.
things fall through the hoops. And I don't want to blame anybody or, have that negative aspect of it, but that's the reality of it, right? Just somewhere something is not working and we have a plastic pollution problem. And like how we got there, maybe it's not that important, but we have it. So the inspiration was like, well, how can I do this? How can I make eggshell thin clay cups? Because the thinking is, well, if I throw a clay cup away, which happens, for all people's good intentions, sometimes plastic cups end up on the street or things, let alone the ones that get put in the garbage and don't get they get processed and go into a landfill. But there's also stuff that floats around in the water, bodies of water, because somehow it got away from that refuge. And that causes problems. And it's like, well, not only is it unsightly, but it's pollution. And now we're starting to see that they're finding microplastics in our food supply and humans. I think there's a recent article that they found it in people's arteries and is starting to create a link to early stroke and heart attacks, all kinds of things. Now, I'm not an expert. This is stuff I'm reading in the media from credible sources, right? So it's not only a pollution problem; it's also like health sort of risk kind of issue. So there's two dimensions to this issue, and I'm saying, well, humans have used clay forever, and it's not been an issue. And it's never been a clay pollution problem, right? We use it in
Right.
many instances, but there is aspects of like, yeah, I don't want to make a thick cup. I want to, because that's more permanent. I want to make this, what we've basically created now is an in-between category. It's not your single-use product, and it's not your $40 Stanley Cup, right? The one that's
Sure.
has a pretty good audience right now. It's in between because our product is now giving the user experience of a dine-in ceramic,
Hmm.
but the convenience of to go. And so it's this, it's touching on all things that are an issue, I think. So, long-winded way of explaining how the inspiration came about and where we're sort of thinking about it. I'll pause there, see if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
No, it does make sense. I think what it's a distinction between what the product is. I was trying to figure that out on my own before we spoke. Just okay, I have clay coffee mugs. Like, how is this going to
Yeah,
be different? And your explanation of the thinness and the convenience of the to go, but with the experience of dine-in is a great way of saying it. I think you mentioned that one of my questions is what are they made of, and it's well the answer is clay, but I think how you're making them is unique as well. And
that's
I'm really
correct.
excited. Yeah, I'm curious if you can get into that and what makes it feasible to even create a clay cup that is disposable essentially or to go or reusable for a period until you're done with it.
I want to take one comment about the convenience. We recognize, like, we don't want to burden the customer. Like, the customer has real reasons why that convenience really works and why they're popular. So it's like, well, how do we provide a convenience without, can I say, destroying the planet?
Hmm.
And it's like, and we think that this is, potential solution here that we've come up with as we scale is like, hey, yeah, it's a earth made product, naturally occurring minerals, but yeah, we make it super thin, so we use a little bit of energy, the least amount of energy possible, the least amount of resources possible, and it's lightweight and stuff. And it has this aspect of like nothing should be permanent, right? It's but use it as long as you can. It'll only stop working if you break it, and that's
Hmm.
the thinness aspect of it. And we do get sometimes some customers saying, "Hey, can you make it thicker?" And it's like, well, as we make it thicker, we can, of course, we can, but then it's no different than your regular ceramic, which is hard to break. Right? We
Right.
want this to break very easily and become dust. So that I wanted to emphasize the convenience aspect is really important because ideally, people are bringing their cups from home. That's a permitted mug, but that's not always convenient. So we're trying to, and we're working on it, trying to find the right balance that, it's not too much of a lift, slight adjustments to the customer, but they get a great user experience. It's like a dining experience, but like, hey, okay, yeah. But yeah, if you want to bring it every day and you don't break it, it'll last, as long as you want it to. How we make it. So that was part of it, like, question from the inspiration. How do I make an eggshell thin, clay cup at scale, basically,
Right.
and at a price point that is not, pure handmade ceramics, right? Which is, people can make them, but so how do I do this? And how, also touching into the concept of wabi sabi, which is the Japanese from lean thinking. It's like, it doesn't need to be perfect. It just need, the imperfection of things have beauty in it because it's naturally made and stuff like that. And, leaning on my engineering background, when I was working as an engineer, I did use additive manufacturing techniques, which is commonly known as 3D printing. And some of the things with 3D printing, and you can buy readily available 3D printers that print clay and ceramics and stuff. But the challenge with those is it takes a long time to print one cup or one object, and it's going to take 4 to 6 hours.
Oh, wow.
So that's not practical because the North Star for us. This is the thinking, and it's far. I get it. I want to acknowledge that, but we're trying to anchor the North Star. Can I have a machine, a desktop, a countertop machine that sits in the coffee shop one day? This is the dream, that could print the cup on demand at the point of use. And it could be a cup, it could be a plate, it could be a bowl, because those are the things that not only coffee roasters or coffee shops use, but to-go products are. It's some sort of
Mm-hmm.
vessel, and instead of making something, in hundreds of millions and shipping them all over the world, can we do it on the spot? And that's truly the dream of what's called distributive manufacturing. So then you're completely eliminating this sort of crazy supply chain, especially
Mm-hmm.
during COVID times, caused a huge strain. But the logic and the thinking is like, why are we shipping things across the ocean when this cup is only really going to be used, a paper cup is used for 15 minutes. But to create it and dispose of it is hundreds of years of like cycle. It just, to
When you say
me,
it like that, my brain is breaking. But I was recently reading about Valentine's Day flowers being shipped all
yeah,
over the world in these refrigerated planes. For
yes,
a few minutes of like, here's your flowers for the day as a gift, and just the overwhelming amount of carbon and energy used to do that, as opposed to sourcing from a local nursery or something like that, right? But that
exactly.
walking into the grocery store and getting your bottle of wine and your thing of flowers is why
Yeah.
that industry continues. And what you're saying too is the idea that I'm not necessarily using the future dream of the on-site kind of mini factory, I guess you would call it, like
Hmm.
desktop factory,
Yep.
tabletop. It feels like this really inspired idea. How realistic is it? Where are you guys at in this process? How are you producing cups now, and bowls and plates? How have you entered the marketplace with this?
So, what was amazing here was that when you really think about it, and again, we did some research, or I did some research, that on average, coffee shop on average, right? There's some that hire maybe uses 250 cups a day. And I think about the Indian guys, so I started the story with where the inspiration. So there's the tea vendor, but somebody's making these cups for the tea vendor, and it's usually another humble family or something. They go to the riverbed, get the clay, so they make these by hand, and then they sell them to the tea vendor. Tea vendor sells you and I a cup of chai for maybe 25 US cents. Maybe that's the full all-in cost. But the entrepreneurial aspect of these humble people is that they're both making enough margin to live
Hmm.
off of, and they're supporting families. So that's the same thing. It's like, why can't we do that here? I know the scales are different, but we have all this technology. Why can't we put it to that type of use? So it's locally sourced clay, right? And we're starting to do that now because the clay we get for our production in San Francisco comes from just outside of Sacramento, right? So it's like, hey, can I have that ethos aspect of it? So to answer your question, yeah, the countertop stuff is not there, but we can make eggshell thin clay cups now, and we do it in this model, what we call a hub and spoke. So instead of have a massive factory somewhere in the world where we could spit out millions, we have these smaller factories that are closer to our customers. And every time we reiterate or iterate our technology, we're trying to make it smaller. So one day it lands up on the countertop. So I'm trying to get to as close to the customer as possible using local resources, local labor, produce it locally, consume and dispose it locally. So it's completely self-contained, and there's not product coming out from some other place. It's all done locally. So not only, kind of creates this ecosystem of an economy, it's also it's homegrown in some ways. It has that can I say artisanal feel to it.
Sure.
You'll know exactly who's making your coffee cups, your cups for you. So we had to, as I started, the commercially available 3D printers too slow. So we had to come up with our own way, our own printers to be able to do this very fast.
What does that mean very fast? How can you tell me how many like you could produce in say a day or something or an hour or
In green state right now, our technology could print one cup in 30 seconds. So what a traditional 3D printer would take 4 to 6 hours, we could do it in 30 seconds. But at the same time, don't ask us to make a toy dinosaur, which the conventional 3D printer can make. We can't do that.
Mhm.
Ours technique was like, I only need to make vessels. And how do I make vessels fast? But I want to make them eggshell thin. I want to use this concept of additive manufacturing. So it's a blend between traditional ceramics and additive manufacturing. I wasn't setting out to make a 3D printer. I was setting out to make thin vessels.
Sure.
And I'm just borrowing techniques from the additive space to serve a purpose. So we have our printers. So in the San Francisco facility, we have a number of them now, and we're making cups and supplying them to our customers.
The greedy capitalist in me that was, inherent in all Americans when we're born, I think.
Yes, I'm a capitalist too. It's not
Absolutely,
philanthropy
right?
here.
It, I'm it's going, you know what? I can get those paper cups for a nickel, or less
Yes,
a piece if I
yes.
buy them in bulk. This sounds like something that's going to be really expensive to me as the cafe owner. How are you navigating that? How are you able to realistically, I think there's value in paying more for a product that is reducing whether it's plastic or environmental impact or whatever. But you got to find cafes and businesses that can do what that example you used of the chai tea vendor, the tea vendor was doing,
Yeah,
where they can make a margin on that cup. It's not taking away
that's
from the
correct.
product price. So how do you manage that?
Yeah, so it's thinking about the product in a way that it's an in between, as I mentioned, right? So don't compare it to your 10-cent cup, paper cup. That's
Hmm.
the natural inclination. Like I buy paper cups for this, and it's part of the cost of a coffee and stuff. Compare it to the $40 Stanley thing because that's the experience you're getting. But and I'll say this for some of our partners, they charge $2 extra for this if you want it,
Hmm.
right? And they're saying if you bring it back, it's an upcharge, so the customer pays for that. You bring it back a few times, we're give you a discount because a lot of cafes are now saying if you bring your own cup, we'll give you. But there's a solution that's being provided that's convenience. If you didn't bring your cup, it's $2 extra. You can bring it back a few times; it'll pay for itself, and you're eliminating significant amount of the single use aspect. So instead of looking at it from the left, which is your 10-cent cup, where we are, let's say retail price is $2, and each cafe decides their own thing, right? So how we work with them is a little bit different. And then on the very right side, the right extreme is your expensive, ceramic, or it's your metal thermos type of thing. This is in between. It's giving you both, but
Hmm.
it's giving you both at a very low price point when you really think about it. So
Sure.
compare it to the $40, there's huge reduction in that cost because it's giving you that experience, but it's giving you this convenience of, sort of, yeah, if I break it, it's okay. I'm not going to be heartbroken if I lose it. Because even the big thermoses, the $40, the number of times those get used is actually not that high from our research. As you're looking at a population, like you might have 3 or 4 of those in your house. How many times do you think you've actually used each one of them? It's not in the hundreds, right?
Right. I mean, I was just at Coffee Fest and they were giving away reusable stainless steel cups, and I would watch people take them and put them in their tote bag and then get sample cups at, the different
Yes,
vendors. And so there has to
exactly.
be you have to have it in your brain. What you're explaining with the how the cafes are managing the cup cost, I've seen already at cafes here in San Diego, in Portland. I've experienced this where they have a reusable jar program, and
Hmm.
essentially it's a returnable jar. Like you pay for the jar up front, and it becomes your jar for that cafe. Every time you bring it back, you don't have to pay for the jar again, and you get a
Yeah,
discount on your coffee. And if it's dirty or you break it, they just take it, wash it, give you a new jar. It's like a jelly jar.
yep,
Same kind of concept for price point, anyways.
yes,
And I assume as you continue down this path, costs will become more and more,
that's
in
correct.
line with what you're hoping for.
That's correct. So as we're early stage startup, and as our focus is really to increase production and reduce cost, but I think society we're starting to see a lot of the signals in the marketplace. The general society is requiring this, that hey, we need to not. I would say this concept of single use anything
Hmm.
has a terminal time frame, that whether it's a year from now, 3 years from now, 10 years from now, this concept's going to go away, because especially the younger generation, they're recognizing like, oh my God, this is awful, right? And we're seeing this in many chains. Certainly the pilot partners that we're working with say that part of their company and part of their brand is to do things responsibly. Like, whether it's the coffee roasters and how they work with the farmers, all the way to the waste aspect of it and the energy that's used to do the roasting. So it's in their ethos that, yeah, we need to do things that, manage that we're producing things in a responsible manner. So is the customer, that type of a customer, B2B customer, is saying this. We're certainly seeing it because people are buying these. They're paying the extra $2. They're bringing it back. And I want to say that not only are they understanding, they're buying it because the experience is nicer. They feel drinking out of a ceramic cup is much nicer than drinking in any plastic cup. Not to mention the health differences, right? So
Hmm.
microplastics and all that. So, and then they're also connecting to the circularity aspect of it. Yeah, if I reuse it, or maybe I don't drink coffee out of it, I put a plant in it, or a little pencil or whatever, pencil holder, or things like that. Many different, repurpose uses, but also the reuse of having another beverage in there. So we're seeing this sort of signal, at least I'm interpreting this signal. There's legislation banning single use anything. There's young, people asking for things that are, nicer to experience. And then that means, hey, it's not throwaway. Even in the fashion industry, right? This concept of like, yeah, can you make it for like $3? Yeah, you could make a t-shirt for $3, but is it good quality? And then you're getting into like, hey, I'm going to throw this away very quickly. We're seeing that a lot. These small signals, but I'm seeing it a lot. And yeah, even large corporations, the largest coffee guy, you look at their annual report, it's in their goals. the
Hmm.
sustainability goals that, hey, we're going to move away and reduce our waste, our plastic waste. So you're seeing that a lot. So we're seeing a lot of these signals coming through. Do we have the perfect model? No. So that's what we're working with pilot partners on to refine it. Like, how can this be an absolutely fantastic experience for their customers, at a low price point, so it's not burning them that way. At the same time, being circular and the climate crisis, it's a long game. It's not like, hey, anybody's going to come up with a silver bullet and all of the thing is, you know.
We hope. We hope
So
it's a long game.
yeah,
I
yeah,
don't mean to
well, yeah,
laugh, but
exactly. We
we
would
hope.
like to play the long, yeah. We want to be around to play the long game. Yes, I think that's what you're saying.
You mentioned partners. I know that you had an announcement about a partnership. Who are some of these partners that are taking a chance on this product, and how is that partnership working for you?
So we have launched with our first European partner in Zurich. It's VCafe. These are forward thinkers. So VCafe, that launch was amazing. They first started with just two roasteries, just two of their roastery and one of their retail stores, and now they're progressing it to more than half of their retail outlets where those cups are going to be available. And then we have a partnership with Verve Coffee, and they're the original. I kind of say the OGs of this whole thing. So I started talking to Mike Iyer and Colby. I want to say almost 2.5 years ago, where at first the conversation like, "Hey guys, I have this idea." Like, what are you talking about? I didn't even have a physical product to show them. And then, a few months later, I had like one of maybe four things that we had made, right? It's like
Yeah.
this, like kind of like really fragile. It's not really perfect. And, you know, like these guys, I want to say these partners, they really care. They really care about their customers. They really care about the future of coffee. And, I've been in their organizations to go, work with them, and down to the last person, like it's built in their DNA that all of this matters. And they're focused on making sure that their customers are getting a great product and great experience, and their ethos and their brand is, lives what they stand for. So they've been amazing partners. And, we all know it's an experiment and we're trying something new. It's a different thing. There's logistics aspects of it because, paper cups you could stack. These are ceramics. How do you stack them differently? How does it still work in the same footprint? All of that.
Mhm.
So this is why pilot partners are really important for us. And that's why we're working. We're choosing to work with a limited amount of partners. We have a long list of customers who want a turnkey solution, like ship me, 100,000 cups, and can I get them for 9 cents each? And it's like we're not there yet because we want to really focus on figuring it out. It's not just about making the cup, but how does it go all the way to the customer? How is it disposed of? What do people think about it? And we wanted to have the customers at the start of the journey because we are, seed stage company versus further down where I'm just selling them a commodity. We don't want to look at it as a commodity. These are problems that collectively need to be solved. So we've taken an approach and a strategy. Like, let's get all the stakeholders. So we even talk to city officials, whether it's in Zurich, whether it's in California, in San Francisco. It's like how can all of us come together to avoid this sort of plastic waste problem or solve this plastic waste problem.
When someone is feeling overwhelmed by these problems and these ideas, and cafe owners, roaster partners in general, I know that feeling of being overwhelmed. There's just a constant barrage of, am I doing the right thing, if that's part of your
Mm-hmm.
mission statement and ethos. And it's hard even as a customer to track my impact, and so you do the best you can. But when we have those moments, where can we find the smash box you mentioned earlier and smash some
Yeah.
glasses?
So when we partner with them, and it's more like a little bit of an interaction. Even with the Smashbox, you have to look at, the purpose is like, yeah, you drink your coffee, you can smash it, and then the clay shards, we pick them up and we give them to like a nursery that grows orchids. So they use it for that. It's a truly reused aspect. That channel is not fully, but the whole idea is there. But then you get into the operations of it. Well, you have to make sure that the customer is emptying. They're not throwing a half-filled coffee cup, because it's basically a smash box, the wooden box, and we're
Mm-hmm.
collecting it in that. But yeah, people throw things in it with other stuff. So that's the learnings we have to kind of work on. We even have a crusher, which is you put the cup on top and you have a little crank, and it basically turns it into sand. And the whole idea can be, oh, can I use coffee grounds with that and put them in a small burlap sack and either give it away or sell it to a customer, and they can use it in their yard, right? Now, have we done, like, hey, is that really compatible with soil, and what is going to change the pH and stuff? We haven't done that yet, but we can, right? It's just a matter of resources. But I could say with 100% confidence that it's an inert material. It's sand. It's not going to create any problems, right?
Yeah,
So
it's certainly not the same as breaking a plastic cup and sprinkling it in your yard or in your flower pot. It's not, doesn't have
exactly.
that same impact. If there's not a meme of Thor smashing a GaeaStar ceramic yet, you need to get on that, I think.
That's a great idea.
Because was that the first Thor movie? He smashes the coffee cup in the diner. One of my favorite scenes in the Marvel movies.
I have to look at that. That's great, Ryan. That's a great idea.
I'm here to work with you. Is there anything that we didn't cover in this little bit? Obviously, there's a million things, but any key components that you want people to know about your company or what the future of your company holds, and how to support that sort of effort?
I think we've all acknowledged that plastic waste is an issue, right? So there's no secret there. But really taking a step and really seeing like the impact it's going to have, especially for the coming generations. They are solutions. As you were mentioning, there's a lot of people working on this, and it's awesome to see. I'm not saying mine's the winner, but there's so many people working on this, and not one solution is going to solve this problem. It's going to be all these combination of these sort of solutions, whether it's a deposit scheme, they bring the jar and stuff, or it's our GaeaStar cup. But I think people have to start doing something, like
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that the throwaway culture that we have lived on for the past, let's say 40 years, 30 years, it's a challenge.
I keep telling my dad that this is your fault, Dad.
You set all of this up, right? And I'm waiting for the day, it'll be a silent smile where the world recognizes that single-use plastics is so barbaric.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I live in an area where a lot of communities have banned single-use plastics, and I'm not obviously a proponent of peer pressure, but as communities have been banning them, neighboring
Yeah,
communities are kind of getting looked at like, well, why haven't you jumped on board this yet? What are you waiting for? Because the customers are wanting it as well.
yeah, yeah,
It certainly is convenient, but I think most customers, most humans want to do the right thing for the environment or
exactly,
for future generations or whatever. But there is also the reality of life is busy and hard and logistics are complicated. And if you make it easier for
exactly.
people, they will generally take that route.
I completely agree with that, and yeah, I think if this story resonates with people, they should go to Verve Coffee or one of the other partners and try it. And we want feedback, yeah, all kinds of feedback, and that's the challenge, the exciting part of it is that feedback goes directly to our engineers, and like, how can we solve this in the easiest way. And we do take a kind of say, our benchmark is always the purest, right? How do I use the least amount of this? But we're also realists, like, okay, can't get zero energy or whatever, like that, things like that. So making it practical, but holding ourselves to a very high bar, And if I could achieve 80% of that high bar, then, we're all miles away from where we are today.
Sure. Someday down the line, you're going to stop into a cafe, I imagine, or a roadside stand, and you're going to order something, and it's going to come in one of your cups, and that's going to be a cool moment because you're not even going to know they had it.
That's correct.
What's going to be in that cup?
And, it's funny that we were talking about coffee shops and stuff. I'm actually not a coffee drinker. Being Indian and, coming from the Commonwealth, I'm a tea drinker. So I usually am an Earl Grey drinker with a little bit of milk, just quarter teaspoon of sugar. That's my morning to go beverage. But I've actually been educated and like really great to hang out with these partners. I did my first cupping, and I could see. I love the way coffee smells. Right, it just tends to be strong for me from a caffeinated perspective, but they have taught me like, oh yeah, there's other options. You can have them. I think it's a very, very rich experience to drink a really nice coffee. So I'm learning, and one of the things in the cupping was, when you're tasting it, part of it is the aroma that you get, right? And that's like it was always in front of me, this 2 + 2, and you're like, and then it made the connection. It's like, yeah, when we drink in a to-go cup with a lid on it, you're not actually tasting the coffee. So you're spending a lot of money, on this premium coffee, getting in a plastic paper cup with a lid on it. Like, yeah, like that could be anything. It could be hot. It could be hot water that's colored brown. I'm being extreme and, kind of tongue in cheek here, but part of the enjoyment is taking the lid off. So one of the requests for us has been, hey, do you have a lid for this? And we're working on it, but our lid solution is not going to be a sippy cup where, you could drink out of the lid. Our lid solution it helps prevent spillage or, splashing, so you could transport it. But because it's a ceramic cup, you want to drink out of the ceramic. So you take the lid off and then you drink off of it. So it's going to be a ceramic lid that fits on top for transport purpose, no problem. But yeah, part of the core thing about this is the user experience. You gotta smell your coffee. Wake up and smell the coffee every day.
Well, and if I'm buying a specialty cup of coffee, it's probably something that I want to experience in a deeper way.
Yes.
Sanjeev, I really appreciate your time and sharing what you're doing. I'm looking forward to following up with you as you go through this process and learning more as you go, how things have changed or improved. And I just appreciate, 45 minutes of your time this morning. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Ryan. It was great meeting you and chatting. It's passion. It's my passion to try and do this. It's our mission. So having an audience like yours to listen in is really, really a privilege to be here. Thank you very much for the time.
Hello again, everyone. Thanks for listening to this chat with Sanjeev Mankotia of GaeaStar. Some key takeaways from today. We actually recorded this show about a month ago, but we wanted to wait to drop it so we could chat about the big news with Verve Coffee. The mission at GaeaStar is to eliminate plastic waste. Instead of trying to make a better, more eco-friendly plastic container, Sanjeev wants to replace the plastic component entirely. The new cups are made from 3 simple ingredients from the earth: clay, salt, and water. Customers can reuse them as many times as they like, or if they prefer, they can dispose of them by breaking them into what is essentially dirt, leaving behind 0 harmful waste products, reducing carbon emissions, and their impact on the planet. An experience in India inspired the creation of these cups. Sanjeev was getting tea from a chaiwala, or a street vendor, who was serving drinks in terracotta cups that, when finished, they smashed on the ground. As the concept for GaeaStar took shape, Sanjeev looked to nature, specifically at the egg for its extreme strength-to-thickness ratio. If you're listening and you didn't know that your common paper to-go cup wasn't recyclable, due to the challenge of separating the plastic liner from the paper, I'm sorry, we didn't mean to burst your bubble. Companies have been trying to crack this challenge for years. Compostable cups were supposed to be the big industry change. You may remember that from a few years ago. But they ran into the same issue. The cups were or are compostable in theory, but only if you have access to a commercial-grade composting facility. If your community isn't mandating composting, tossing them into your home composting bucket or pile probably won't get it done. The challenges to replacing impactful to-go cups were and are numerous. How does a company make a thin, convenient, competitively affordable clay cup at scale and do it efficiently? Any one of those concerns are a huge challenge. Sanjeev's company has built their own specialized machines that currently produce cups in about 30 seconds. Each machine iteration improves on the design and gets GaeaStar closer to the goal of a countertop machine that could be at each cafe or restaurant, enabling them to produce their own cups in a form of distributive manufacturing. It's a cool idea that spirals the environmental benefits outwards. Less shipping across the world, for one thing. That to-go cup at the local cafe probably came from overseas. Those cups journey around the world to be used for about 15 minutes and then discarded. That's just one example of their impact beyond the manufacture and use of plastics. GaeaStar and this show ask you to be intentional about your use. If you're listening to this podcast, there is a 99.99% chance you own at least a few coffee mugs. Probably at least a few travel mugs too. So take them with you when you go to the cafe, if you can. I often wonder if we, as a coffee industry, are serious about moving towards a sustainable future, not just by recycling, but throughout the supply chain. It seems as if Sanjeev and GaeaStar are trying to be on the forefront of the effort to improve, not just by offering a new product, but by considering all the impacts that production creates along the way. It's a bigger picture thinking that retailers need to consider if they're serious about their footprint. I believe that if we are able to make it easier for a consumer to be environmentally friendly, most humans will choose that better path. GaeaStar is trying to remove the roadblock that is plastic-lined takeaway products, which is cool and I'm pretty excited about. Whether this version of the cup works or not doesn't matter. It's a step forward towards a plastic-free future. Finally, the Smashbox sounds awesome. That's our Coffee Smarter Pro episode for today. Thanks to our guest, Sanjeev Mankotia of GaeaStar. You can learn more about what they are creating and where they are at in the process by going to GaeaStar.com. That's GaeaStar.com. You can also follow them on Instagram at GaeaStar_. All of these links are in this episode of the podcast's show notes, and, of course, in our newsletter at coffeesmarterpodcast.com. A big thank you to Hasea Coffee Source and Crossings Coffee for their support of our Coffee Smarter efforts, and to our presenting sponsor, GaeaStar Coffee Packaging. Find them at GaeaStar.com. They'll help you tell the big story of your small business. That's GaeaStar.com. Shout out to the rest of our industry partners, including Zoombar Coffee and Tea, Steady State Roasting, Moisture Coffee Company, Coffee Cycle, Camp Coffee Company, Maria Coffee, Cape Horn Green Coffee Importers, Ignite Coffee Company, Ascend Coffee Roasters, Ascento Coffee Roasters, Civets Roasting Machines, San Franciscan Roasters, Me and My Uncle Coffee, and finally, Cozy Canine Coffees. This show is part of the Roast West Coast Coffee Network and can be found on your favorite podcast platform, like Apple or Spotify. Search for Coffee Smarter Pro. If you want even more, the best place to listen, learn, and connect with the community of craft coffee is on coffeesmarterpodcast.com. Sign up for our newsletters to learn and be inspired by other coffee people. This episode of the podcast was written, recorded, and edited by me, Ryan Wolt, and I promise you, there was a lot of editing today. That's all, everyone. Please tip your baristas and drink good coffee. Smarter. Hey there, thank you for checking out that episode of Coffee Smarter Pro with Sanjeev Mankotia. If you enjoyed that, or you'd like to just check out a little bit more coffee education, Search for Coffee Smarter and Coffee Smarter Pro on your favorite podcast platform. You'll find links in this podcast's show notes.